Hey, good morning, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to hop on for our webinar here today. Uh, one of our third one here in this little winter series of webinars that we're doing. And today we're actually going to talk about custom products. There was a lot of feedback from people about wanting to see more about custom products. So hopefully we can touch on some different aspects that would be helpful to you guys. So we're going to get into that in just a moment, but actually just real quick, I'm going to put up a poll here, which you should be able to see now. And main thing here is really just kind of get a sense of, if as we jump more into the spring, and I know things start to speed up and get busier for some of you guys. But if you are still interested in continuing on with some of these things, maybe give me some feedback on that. And if you're hearing this after the fact on a recording, you can always shoot us an email just indicating, would you be interested in a set of spring webinars that we do? And if you are, let us know if it would be more on a weekly basis or in every other week. Would you, and, would it be a definite you would attend, or, maybe, or not likely? So yeah, just give us some feedback there. Appreciate the answers that have gone in. I'm gonna give you about 10 seconds more to give some input there, and then we'll move on. So, all right, perfect. I'm going to close that poll down. Thanks for that. Okay, yeah. So today, just going to jump into some custom products. And in some ways, while on the one hand, custom products are kind of straightforward and just kind of, they're solving a particular problem, they actually can they have their fingers going out a lot of different places, and they can get into different situations. So probably not going to be able to cover everything fully, but a couple things is to begin with is like, okay, why would I need to call a custom product? And usually the answer to that is well, because I can't find what I'm looking for and I need to be able to call it. But there's going to be some cases where you know what you want to call. It's like, yeah, I want to call this product for this application, but I can't seem to get to it. And so kind of a little aside coaching here is as you go to call product, as you go to call material in your job, it's always good to approach it from the standpoint of, okay, how am I going to use this material first? That's in the software, that's just how the software tends to flow better is find your application first and then move from there. So a good example of this might be, maybe you're finishing up the job and you want to call some finish framing. It's just some extra fill-in blocking and other things like that. If we come to the finish framing application, we can click in here and you'll find we have 2x4 and 2x6 mapped. And this could be true like in all sorts of different applications where maybe you're going to the application, whatever it is, and you look in there and you look in the application and it doesn't have the product you're looking for, but it's a database product. It exists. It's just not showing up in the list. So let's say, for example, that I wanted to call 2x8 as a product here to use in finish framing, and it's just not showing. So what I can do is I can actually come to my line item here and I can come to my custom product button here. And you'll see at the top, I have the option to go to database product. I'm going to click in here. I'm going to type in and look for 2x8. And since 2x8 is a database product, it already exists in the database, just doesn't happen to be mapped here. Then you can pull that up and I'll select it, click Save Changes, and now it's available for me to use in the finish framing application. And if I went somewhere else and used finish framing in this job, I would be able to do the same thing. So that's kind of the first step when it comes to custom products is this product actually just available already in the database and you just want to make it make use of it, then just use the custom database product option. So with that being said, admittedly, there's always then going to be other stuff where you need to be able to create a custom product. Now, there's lots of different places you can create that product from, whether it's here in the material list. Just kind of on the fly as you're in a particular product, you can create a full custom product from here. You can also do it from the plan tab as you're drawing stuff along and you say, oh, okay, I want to call a particular hold down and what I want to find isn't there. So right here on the far right hand side, I can hit the custom button and that will take me again to this pop-up. I can come over here to the custom product and type in, rename stuff, and we'll get to that in just a second. So you can do it from the list, from the plan. And then also, especially useful when you're working in your template file, because if there's two different types of custom products that we tend to see out there. One would be the custom product that is just sort of one-off for the job. You know, there's just something very unique on a plan, and it's once a year, once every 10 months you call this product and you see it. And so you're just in the job and you're calling it, and that's all you need. The other type of custom product, which is probably more common for most of you, is that it's a product that is in your regular arsenal of materials. It's maybe something that's a little bit more regional, something that's just more a little bit specific to your product stack. And so you want it to have it be available for all of your jobs so that you can call it as you need it. In that case, it's always good to go back to your template file. And from there, you would come to profile and across the top to custom product. And here is where you could also create a custom product, and you actually have a little bit more flexibility when you do it from the profile side, especially if you're wanting to set this up to use in multiple places. So when you go to create a custom product, I'm going to do it from the profile in this case. I'm going to come to the upper left-hand corner and click the plus button. And we're going to start with product name. And for our example, to start with, we're going to start with a piece of flashing, and I'm going to call a 3-inch by 10-foot, we'll say Eve flashing. We usually recommend starting with the dimensions of the product, and then the other coaching here, as far as when you call the product family name, is however it is that you want this to show up on your material list, that's what you're going to want to type here. So keep in mind, if this is supposed to be like a bucket full of nails, that you're calling, but you never indicate that it's a bucket, you just say 16 penny nails. Well, that might not be very helpful on the material list because, you don't, was it a box of nails, a bucket of nails? Was it, just a 1 pound package? So you have to think about, what's the material list going to look like by what I type in here. Second is going to be the product category, and this is significant, especially as it relates to your dimensions and how product is being calculated. I'm going to click on the expand button. And while there's a lot of categories here, it really boils down to kind of 2 or 3 that really make or break things. So first is going to be lumber. I'm going to select lumber here just so you can see it to start with. Here you can see how, if this is actually a lumber product and you want it to interact with stocking lengths and things like that, then you can see here that the diagram shows you're going to enter the depth this way, the width this way, and the length. Notice the notation over here that the length is typically left blank, and that's because if you're putting something into the lumber category, that the intent there is really that it's going to interact with stocking lengths and pull from the potential stocking lengths that are made available to it. So that's lumber behavior. In a similar fashion, engineered wood, this would be very similar to lumber. It's a different set of stocking lengths that you can apply to it, but really the concept again is the same: depth, width, and then length. And then most everything else, whether it's just hardware or flashing or just whatever else, most of it's going to fall into the category here that you can see that things are oriented a little bit differently, especially as you think about siding products and such. And so you're going to enter it that way. Now I'm going to go ahead and enter it for this. Since my width is 3 inches, I'm going to enter it as 3 inches there, and length I'm going to put as 10 feet. Now these dimensions are important, especially as you think about how the software is going to calculate product for you. Now in the case of the 3-inch by 10-foot Eve flashing, most likely I'm going to use this in an application where I'm going to draw the lineal footage and then pick this product. And so the key dimension here that's very important would be the length, because obviously if I entered this as 20 feet long, it's going to say, oh, this thing covers 20 feet, and in reality it's only 10. So obviously that's going to be off. So you want to make sure that the dimensions that matter are reflective of how that product's going to be used, and we'll talk about another variation of that here in just a minute. Then down here in the attributes section, this is where you can have different variations of the product. Now, a key thing here that we stress heavily is as you create a custom product, it's okay to have variations. So for example, I could put, maybe I want to put galvanized here, and I'll add that in, and maybe that's my default, but I can also carry white, and I also carry black. this is a great example of how to use attributes. So instead of having to create 3 different custom products, I can just pick one and then adjust as I need. What you totally don't want to do, and this is the big guideline, is don't ever use attributes to change the lengths or the dimensions of the product. You know, as if to say, oh, well, I have a 10-foot version and then I have a 16-foot version, and I'll put the 16-foot version in the attributes. That way I can change it as needed. Obviously, that's not going to work well because the length is going to stay fixed up here. And so you're going to be calculating it wrong in some cases. So the biggest guideline when you choose to use attributes is use attributes to create variations of the same type of product. But if it's going to be changing sizes, that's where you don't want to try to put sizes inside of your attributes. Instead, just create a separate custom product. Finally, down here, as you go to, and this is where you have a little more flexibility if you do this from the profile side, is you can assign wherever you want this application to go. So I could put this in Eve flashing and even end wall flashing, the flashing application. You know, I could put this a lot of different places, roof flashing, just so that as I go to different applications, this product becomes available. Maybe it's not so obvious here for flashing, but in the case of, say, like a lumber type product or a siding or a trim type product, you know, you could add a trim type product to many, many different applications because you want it for window trim and door trim and bottom window trim and, you know, everything else. So that's mapping it into those specific applications. That way it actually is available when you go to use it. I'm going to click create. And so now that gets added in here, has my products, and it's available to use. I can always come back and I can choose to edit this, make changes, add more to it. Now let's say that I did have a 16-foot Eve flashing. One of the cool things that we just added here for the profile side is I could say, well, everything else is pretty much the same. So I'm going to come here, click edit, and I'm going to come here and say this is 16, and I'm going to change the length to 16. Now at this point, I have 2 options. I could either save my changes, which will just change this to a 16-foot piece, or I can create a new custom product based on the changes I just made. So I'll click that, and now I have 2. I have a 16-foot version and a 10-foot version, and everything else has already been added in for me. So that's how you go about creating. Now, so I'm going to jump over to the plan tab here, and just to kind of point out another important key as you get into creating custom products and dimensions, because that's probably the biggest thing where people tend to struggle is either just flat out not entering the dimensions, but then also how those things can get you into trouble. I'm going to come over here to the roof framing, and let's say that I wanted to call some hip and ridge, and I wanted it to be like a bundle of 3 tab. So I'm going to draw my line here, go to applications, and let's do I'm going to do hip and ridge. And I'll go to product and go to more products. I'm going to jump and see what options I have. All I have available to me is lineal feet of hip and ridge. And so if I really wanted that specific product, the 3 tab bundle, I'm going to come here and click custom. And I know it's not in the database, so I'm going to click on custom product. And now I'm going to create my product. So I'm going to call this 3 tab shingle bundle. And I'll even be really clear just so that I know this is, 1/3 per square is the size that we're dealing with here. Okay, so I entered my product name. My category, I'm going to put into roofing. And now I can see how this is going to go. Now, here's the interesting thing that you have to keep in mind with your dimensions is a lot of products, you're just really going to call only one way, like that flashing that we just did earlier. That's only going to be used in one particular sense. And I'm going to collect the length, and that's pretty much it. In the case of this 3 tab shingle, I might use this 2 different ways. I might use it in a length type sense where it's like, okay, a bundle of 3 tab shingles, if I chop it up and use it as ridge cab, that's going to give me about 35 linear feet of coverage for ridge. But then I might also use that 3-tab shingle to actually just be straight up shingling or roofing for roof shingles. So this is where you have to be careful on how you enter these values. So here we can see that width and length this is how we're going to get to our area calculation to know how much does this cover, what's the width times the length. So for us, the two values here are width and length that are going to be important. But in this case also, if I'm going to eventually expect to use this as length, then I need to make sure that I enter this in a way that if it's used as length, it gets an appropriate length. So I can start with the length and I can say, okay, this should be 35 feet. That's what it should be for the length, because if it ever gets used in a length quality, it should be 35 feet. So in that case, then since I know this covers 33 square feet, or give or take a decimal point or two, then I'm going to have to enter a value here that is appropriate to actually get me to that coverage. So I'll take, that 33 feet divided by 35 and find out that, okay, so the coverage really here is 0.95 feet, give or take a decimal point, and it'll convert that into something else. But now when it goes to figure area, it's going to say, oh, okay, 11 inches and some times 35 feet, that's going to give you the 33 feet of coverage. Whereas if it gets used in the length value, it uses the 35 feet, which would be appropriate if I'm using it in a ridge cap type form. So I know that goes a little bit off into the weeds a little bit, but just keep that in mind as you build your custom products there. And then also, as I leave here, since I'm doing I'll point out the differences of doing it on the fly. So here I am in the roof area, and I'm doing this for roof or hip and ridge. Create new custom products. There it is. Click OK, and it's there and available for me to use. Notice also that the width, this is showing the 11 inch wide. That's because typically when you create a custom product, the width is going to be what displays over here in the digitizer. So if you're doing a product where the width really just doesn't matter and it's only like, an 1/8 of an inch thick, and that's the width of the item, if that is never going to come into your calculations, you actually may want to make that to be like 2 or 3 inches wide, just so that it's easy for you to visualize here in the digitizer, and the 2 or 3 inches just won't ever come into play anyways. But looking back on the profile as we finish up here, so here is the product that we just created, the 3-tab shingle bundle. I can come in here to edit it, and I could come find other applications where I might want to use it. So like roof shingles, I could use it there, or roofing, I could use it there. Click Save Changes, and now if I was to go to those other applications, I'd be able to do that. As we wind down here, I'm sorry I didn't bring attention to it earlier, but the Q&A section, we'll have that open here for a couple minutes, but if you have some Q&A, especially related to custom product, feel free to throw those into there now, and we'll see if there's any that we can cover here as we wind this down. And then if we aren't able to get into them here, we can certainly follow up with you after the fact as well. And also feel free to throw questions in there related to other items also. Just leave that open for a couple more minutes, but yeah, thanks for taking the time to jump on. Like I said, we'll keep the chat open here. We'll keep answering some questions as you have them, but appreciate your time today, and we'll talk to you more next time in a couple weeks. Thanks, everybody.